Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I appreciate everyone hanging in there and we will get started. Megan, could you please call the roll?
Regent Adams,
Present.
Regent Adongo,
Here.
Regent Bogus,
Here.
Regent Fritz, Regent Goydam,
Here.
Regent Cruiser,
Present.
Regent Manydeeds,
Here.
Regent Nixon,
Here.
Regent Pauselitz,
Here.
Regent Prince,
Here.
Regent Rye,
Here.
Regent Rogers,
Here.
Regent Salzwedel,
Here.
Regent Terwilliger,
Here.
Regent Trainer, Regent Underley,
Here.
Regent Walsh, and Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Megan. As we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session agenda? Hearing none, let's proceed. The record of the June 5th, 6th, 2025 meeting of the UW System Board of Regents has been provided. Are there any corrections? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as distributed. I'd like to start by welcoming our newest regent, Sarah Rogers. Sarah was elected earlier this week as the new president of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board, succeeding Mark Tyler. Sarah is a planning and policy analyst with Employ Milwaukee, the Workforce Development Board representing Milwaukee County. Her work includes scaling career pathways by connecting employers, educators, and other stakeholders to meet the talent needs of industry. She is also a member of the Governor's Council on Workforce Investment. Sarah earned a BA from UW Milwaukee and has spent her career in public or nonprofit service dedicated to economic and social justice. Welcome, Sarah, very newly minted regent. And would you like to say a few words?
Yes, newly minted as of yesterday. So this was jumping right on and jumping right into it. So no, thank you for that kind introduction, President. And I look forward to working with you and the rest of the regents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regent Rogers. And now I believe President Rothman has some updates and introductions.
I do. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to welcome two chancellors who officially took the helm at their respective universities earlier this month. First, I'd like to extend a welcome to Chancellor Manohar Singh at UW Oshkosh. I know you were introduced at our meeting last month, but would you like to say a few words now that you are officially on the job? Manohar. You may be muted, Manohar. We can't hear you. Still nothing. I tell you what, why don't we move forward? We can come back, but we're very excited to have Dr. Singh join us, and it was my privilege earlier this week to be with Dr. Singh and Governor Evers as they toured the existing Polk Library that will be transformed by the actions in the state budget. It's also my pleasure to introduce today Interim Chancellor Mike Carney from UW Eau Claire. Mike, would you like to say a few words?
I would. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you.
So thank you, President Rothman and the board, for your confidence in appointing me to this interim role. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to serve my alma mater in this way as I somewhat slowly transition my way to retirement. I have a wonderful team. And again, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. And I look forward to working closely with the board and with the system office during my time as the interim chancellor. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mike. And I saw Alex Hummel in the background, Manohar, so hopefully you are operational.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. So Alex is solution to many of my problems, the tech ones right now. But it is a privilege to be able to join you all and being introduced second time. This is really with deep gratitude, as I mentioned earlier. This is for me not a job, but a calling and a mission that is, in my mind and in my perspective, divine as we build lives through education. So thank you for that opportunity to all of you regents who helped us lead to this day where Governor was able to visit us, and we got good chunk of not only the pride and the spirit that universities of Wisconsin represent, but also some tangible benefit to University of Wisconsin. So good starting for me. My colleagues are all in happy spirits. We have strategic planning that we will be reconfiguring based upon our institutional realignment plan that we had. I think we are in good spirits, good financial shape. Structural deficit is, am I told that it is not only minimized, but we should be looking at a zero structural deficit in the coming years. So with new strategic plan and with some solid plans towards the facilities master planning, I think we have much brighter future to look up to. So thank you for your support, President Rothman and all the regents. Thank you. I'll keep you posted as we move forward with this.
Excellent. And once again, welcome Chancellor Singh. We have two other chancellors who will be beginning their new roles in mid-July. Chancellor Tom Gibson, who will assume the role at UW-Milwaukee, and Interim Chancellor Pratima Gandhi, who will assume Tom's role at UW Stevens Point. And I'm sure we will hear from them at our next meeting when they are officially in their new roles. But we look forward to both their service in both of those roles. And with that, President Bogos, back to you.
Thank you very much, President Rothman. As we are all aware, in the early morning of July 3rd, Governor Tony Evers signed the budget for the new biennium. This budget represents a historic and unprecedented investment in the universities of Wisconsin, the largest in nearly 20 years. Thanks to bipartisan negotiations between our governor and legislative leaders, and through strong advocacy by President Rothman, our incredible government relations team, led by Interim Vice President of Government Relations, Chris Patton, his superb team, including Kennedy Borman, excuse me, Nate Sarah, Scott Adrian, Jean Tarantino, and Allison Stiles, our incredible chancellors, Alex Rowe and her incredible team, our faculty, our staff, students, alumni, and community partners, we avoided a proposed $87 million cut. Instead, we secured a $256 million increase in base funding for the universities of Wisconsin. This dramatic reversal underscores a meaningful shift in legislative priorities and demonstrates the power of unified strategic advocacy on behalf of public higher education. President Rothman will go into more detail, but here are a few things that our funding will provide critical support for. $53 million in general operating support for our universities, $54 million dedicated to the recruitment and retention of faculty in high demand fields, $7 million to support virtual mental health services with 3% and 2% general wage adjustments effective for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. However, as we are aware, the victory comes with strings attached. The final budget package includes significant policy requirements, including a mandated teaching workload, a continuation of the cap on state-funded positions, the implementation of a standardized system-wide transfer credit policy, and new faculty workload reporting requirements. These conditions will require careful planning, clear communication, and continued partnership with our faculty, academic staff, chancellors, and other campus leaders. It is incumbent upon us to balance the accountability expected by the legislature with our commitment to academic quality, shared governance, and the values of our universities. In sum, this budget is a major step forward for our universities, but it also marks our shared responsibility for reform. I am confident that with leadership and support, we can meet these expectations while protecting the core mission of the universities of Wisconsin. Next, I want to talk about our tribal consultation. And on May 7th, Regent Ed Manydeeds, Chief of Staff Jess Lathrop, Vice President Chris Patton, Tribal Liaison Dr. Jennings, and NAGPRA Director Zach Hapner attended our consultation meeting with tribal leaders. These ongoing consultations, which began in 2022, have helped shape the thoughtful, forward-looking 2025-2026 work plan, the most comprehensive to date. During the May meeting, tribal leaders offered key guidance that has now been incorporated into a work plan. Topics of discussion included improving Native American student data collection to better reflect tribal descent, developing a UW system-wide Native student recruitment strategy, drawing from successful models at UW Oshkosh, UW-Madison, and UW Green Bay. Also, we hope to initiate a pilot program with UW-Eau Claire to have a tuition remission program for students who are enrolled members of Wisconsin federally recognized tribe. Increasing financial affordability and expanding support for adult learners and tribal workforce development, ensuring robust implementation of Act 31, integrating treaty rights education along with tribal culture and history into our schools of education across the University of Wisconsin, growing NAGPRA compliance capacity, and strengthening relationships with Wisconsin's Tribal College, who we look forward to presenting at our September 2025 board meeting. We are fortunate in Wisconsin to have two of the approximately 35 accredited tribal colleges, which are College of Menominee Nation and the Coudray Ojibwe Community College. We are seeking formal endorsement of this plan at the upcoming GLTSI meeting in July, and I want to underscore our deep appreciation to all tribal partners for their candor, collaboration, and vision. Next, as we absorb this state-level progress, we must also remain vigilant about headwinds at the federal level. Since February, the Trump administration has enacted sweeping changes to federal research funding and oversight. These include a retroactive 15% cap on indirect costs for all federal research grants, proposed cuts of 40% to NIH and 57% to NSF, canceled or clawed back grants on politically sensitive topics like climate change, transgender health, and racial equity, suspended peer review panels and frozen new award decisions, barriers to publishing in top journals, and restrictions on diversity-related researchers. One grant exemplifies the deep impact of these cuts. The University of Wisconsin-Madison lost a $10 million NIH-funded study led by Dr. Ellen Selke, assistant professor at UW-Madison. It was focused on how social media affects youth mental health. Her team had enrolled more than 325 adolescents across Wisconsin, collecting rich and comprehensive data through MRIs, interviews, and surveys. The study was the only NIH-funded project in the country focused exclusively on adolescent mental health and digital media use. In late March, the NIH informed UW-Madison of the grant's termination via email, citing a shift in funding priorities. The cancellation of this and other grants has raised urgent concerns from faculty and administrators about the integrity of academic freedom and the increasing politicization of federal research priorities. UW-Madison ranks number 6 of 920 public and private universities in research expenditures. Nearly $900 million annually of the $1.7 billion research funding is generated in federally funded research. Even marginal disruptions create lasting ripple effects on our students, our state's innovation pipeline, and our national academic standing. International collaborations have been discouraged, and visa challenges have drastically reduced the flow of international graduate students who make up a substantial portion of our STEM pipeline. These actions threaten the core of the American research enterprise, upending decades of bipartisan consensus and placing universities at the center of a growing ideological battle. As we chart a path forward in strengthening support for our public universities, it is critical that we remain vigilant in defending the independence of scholarly inquiry and continuing advocating for sustained, unbiased federal support for academic research. For our system, this federal instability underscores the importance of our recent state investment and the need to protect research continuity at the campus level. It also reinforces the urgency of retaining top faculty, securing diversified funding sources, and advocating for academic freedom and scientific integrity. Finally, I want to congratulate our fellow Regent, Dr. Jill Underly. On July 7th, Dr. Underly was sworn in for her second term as the 20th Superintendent, Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. As you may recall, Dr. Underly won re-election last April. Thank you and for your service, Regent Underly, and congratulations. And also, I want to do a huge thank you and shout out to Stephen Hopper for implementing, is it day 3 of work plan? Do I have that right? Day 3. And so far, knock on wood, the plane is flying and it's such a huge lift. I think it's been over 5 years in the making. So what an amazing feat him and his team have accomplished. And I really want to make sure that we thank him and the ongoing support that hopefully he will be receiving from the system and anyone else. So thank you, Stephen. In closing, I want to just say the largest budgetary investment in over 20 years, the continued strengthening of our government to government relationships with tribal nations, and the urgent need to safeguard our research ecosystem signal the complexity and momentum of the environment we now operate in. Our mission to expand access, invest in people, and lead in workforce innovation has never been more urgent or more supported. Let's continue to carry it forward. Let's work together. That concludes my report for today, and I will now turn it back over to President Rothman.
Great, thank you very much. And just continuing with the state budget for a little bit, Region President Bogost shared its highlights on the operating side, but I would like to also express my thanks, and I am certainly grateful, and I know we are collectively, to Governor Evers for his steadfast champion of the universities of Wisconsin. And I greatly appreciate the work that the legislature did, legislative leadership did on both sides of the aisle, that I think reflected a recognition that the universities of Wisconsin, Wisconsin has an extraordinary asset that can benefit everyone's future and provide opportunity for generations of Wisconsinites. I would also be remiss if I didn't at this point take this opportunity to thank and offer my sincere thanks to the more than 850 supporters from around the state who signed a letter to help us advocate for additional funding that will enable us to continue to provide those opportunities that will enhance Wisconsin's future economic vibrancy. You can see the names scrolling on the screen, and I just wanted to indicate that their support was invaluable as part of this process. Region President Bogost talked about the operating additions that come with the new budget. In addition to those operating funds, we also received a substantial capital investment of $840 million, including enumeration of our 2 top major project requests, namely UW La Crosse's Prairie Springs and UW Milwaukee's Health Sciences Building. Both of those will benefit our state for years to come, along with the other building projects that were enumerated by the legislature. So now that the state budget process is complete, we know that the legislative session will continue until next spring, and we will continue to advocate in the state capitol for the universities of Wisconsin. We know there is a lot of work yet to do, but I believe we are headed in the right direction. In the coming weeks and months, we have to work through some proposed changes and other budgetary issues. As much as the funding is designated for specific purposes, and subject to subsequent legislative review, particularly by the Joint Committee on Employment Relations. And we'll kind of walk through that so you have a little bit more specificity because of the contingent nature of the funding. Region President Bogos mentioned the reforms that we need to work through. And let me give a little bit more detail on those reforms. First, the universities of Wisconsin must limit the number of positions funded by general purpose revenue and program revenue to the levels in place in January 2024. This is effectively a continuation of the legislative agreement we reached with the legislature on December 13th, 2023. That position cap has some significant exceptions to it, including for faculty, instructional staff, and others who are 75% or more student or patient facing. But we will have to continue to monitor those levels. And now that though that position cap remains, at least in the near term, on indefinitely. Secondly, the universities of Wisconsin must develop credit hour teaching loads for faculty and instructional academic staff and have a policy adopted by this board no later than December 1st, 2025. And again, submit that plan to Joker for approval. Under the statute, our faculty and staff in our non-R1 universities must teach at least 24 credits per academic year. For R1 designated universities, namely UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee, the faculty must teach 12 credits per academic year. We are required and have the ability to create proposed exceptions to those specific policy requirements, as well as a buyout policy for positions that do not meet those minimum credit thresholds. I think it's important to note that this is a complex and nuanced area. This is not a simple lift, and we will need to work extraordinarily hard to ensure our universities have the means necessary to attract and retain great faculty and great faculty and instructional staff at our universities. This will be a heavy lift for us to accomplish. The UWs must also facilitate core general education transfers between the universities, which will need to be in effect by September 1, 2026. With that said, that deadline's a way off, but we need to have a proposal for those transfer policies, and that must be submitted again to the Joint Committee on Employment Relations by December 31, 2025. So there are a number of very important deadlines coming up in the near term. In addition, under the terms of the statute, which became statute once the budget was signed into law by the governor, we will be required to contract with an outside auditing or consulting firm for the purposes of reviewing and analyzing ways we can continue to improve the organizational efficiency throughout the universities of Wisconsin. In addition to helping guide our work, this study will be completed and presented to the legislature and to appropriate legislative committees by the end of 2026. Overall, the state budget provides these key resources that will be lost unless we get this work done, and we need to make sure that we get that work done. At the same time, and while we are grateful for the additional funding by the state, we also need to recognize the state covers 1/5 of our total revenue budget at the universities of Wisconsin. Again, 1/5, about 20% of our overall revenue. Tuition, which supports more than that, and that tuition support is helpful, is a key to help us make investments that deliver on the promise of quality that our students deserve and our parents expect. I think the tuition proposals that are being recommended to this board today strike the right balance between state funding and tuition so that we can ensure that Wisconsin provides the quality that our students deserve, but that we also do so at an affordable level. To provide some context, and I know Regent Rye will go into this in greater detail when he presents the report from the Business and Finance Committee. If we look at just our regional comprehensive peers, resident undergraduate tuition at our UW regional comprehensives increased 7.7% over the last 10 years, that period from 2015 to 2025. That is well below our neighboring states, which had increases that ranged anywhere from approximately 22% to approximately 29% during that same period. So we're at 7.7. The regional comprehensives are at between our peer regional comprehensives outside of Wisconsin are closer to 22 to 29%. And I know, again, Regent Rye will provide additional feedback and the recommendation from the Business and Finance Committee on both the tuition increase and the proposed fiscal 2026 budget. But I wanted to add a few of those high-level points for you to consider. As always, we will continue to work hard to align our budget to the objectives set forth in the strategic plan this board approved in December 2022. It is imperative that our budget priorities do not deviate from our strategic priorities. We are all keenly aware that we are facing considerable uncertainty in key areas in the federal fund that impact both our budget planning and our mission at the universities of Wisconsin. Since our last board meeting, I traveled to Washington, D.C. for a day of meetings with our congressional delegation, where I discussed our concerns with H.R. 1, otherwise known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and any actions which would negatively impact our student access, success, or our ability to serve the citizens of Wisconsin. Throughout those meetings, I also discussed the importance of fully funding the federal research agencies, given the world-class research that is taking place across our universities, which Regent President Bogus laid out with some detail and some specificity, and ensuring that important priorities like federal financial aid programs receive the funding levels, full funding in fiscal 26, not the cuts that we have seen proposed in the president's budget. Well, H.R. 1 has now been signed into law. The members and staff I met with of our congressional delegation understood the importance of our mission and were committed to working with us as Congress continues the fiscal 26 appropriations process. We will continue to actively engage with our delegation, our national associations, and our higher education partners to make sure that we do not narrow the funnel to higher education. In fact, I think there are three primary areas of concern. First is the potential narrowing of the funnel for student financial aid, particularly around the Pell Grant. To put this into perspective, in 23-24, about 60% of students overall attending the universities of Wisconsin received financial aid. That's about 91,000 undergraduates and 18,000 graduate students. In that same period, approximately 21% of UW undergraduates, or about 31,500 students, received Pell Grants, which aggregated $158 million. As we work to expand access and grow the number of graduates we produce, threats to limit Pell Grant funding will jeopardize these efforts and ultimately have a negative impact on the Wisconsin economy. I will take this opportunity to remind you of a landing page we launched last month, wisconsin.edu/fuel futures, providing a place for our UWs to engage students, families, and alumni to have a voice in these discussions. To date, we've had about 75 students who have shared their personal stories about how Pell Grant funding has impacted their lives. And I encourage you to take a look at those because I think it will really reinforce why we are all here and the mission that we fulfill. A second area of significant uncertainty is the status of federal indirect payments relating to research. Indirect payments are at negotiated rates that are negotiated with the federal government and cover costs associated with conducting federally sponsored research, including essential research infrastructure and administrative functions. In recent months, the federal government has proposed reducing, and in some cases significantly, the size of those indirect payments, and the Trump administration has issued executive orders to that effect. With limited funding sources to compensate for the reduced federal indirect reimbursement levels, some research efforts will no longer be available. But the third, and I think probably the most significant area as it relates to research, is simply the uncertainty around research grants and how they will be funded. The vital funding that enables the universities of Wisconsin and other universities across the nation to do the research that enhances quality of life, secures our national defense and energy abundance, improves our natural resources, brings new and life-saving therapy to patients, and creates the companies, jobs, and economic prosperity that sustain our country. As noted by Regent President Bogos, this research enterprise has made America the envy of the world. Last year, federal awards to the universities of Wisconsin amounted to over $1.4 billion, with the lion's share going to our flagship UW-Madison, with its research expenditures at $1.7 billion last year, currently ranked at number 6 in the country. And when you think about Wisconsin, that is an outsized performance for our state, and we can be incredibly proud of our flagship. Those grants, however, are at risk. The awards that have supported Madison have come from a broad range of federal agencies such as National NIH, Department of Defense, NSF, and others. The potential loss of this funding, and in the president's proposed budget, just looking at NIH and NSF, for example, proposed to be cut by 40 to 50%. The impact of that loss of that funding would impact our research enterprise in opportunities here in Wisconsin and around our country. At UW-Madison, federal funding supports a wide range of critical innovations and discoveries, from weather satellites that save lives during natural disasters to groundbreaking research toward finding cures for Alzheimer's and cancer, to combating the fentanyl crisis and expanding fusion technology. The scope is vast and it is impactful. And that's not just at Madison, that's at our other R1 at UW-Milwaukee and across the universities of Wisconsin. Uncertainty in these broad areas, federal financial aid, federal indirects, and federal research funding, potentially jeopardize the longevity and our ability to serve students of lower socioeconomic means, and it jeopardizes our research enterprise, not just for the next fiscal year of the federal budget, but quite frankly for generations, particularly around research, because if those laboratories get unwound, they don't just flip a switch and are turned on in short order. At a time when we need more college graduates in order to win the war for talent, we ought to be expanding access and fully funding the programs that allow us to do our job. And with that, concludes my report, and I will turn it back to you, President Bogos.
Thank you very much, President Rothman. Regents, are there any questions or comments on President Rothman's report? Anybody? Okay. All right. Moving on. I'll call upon Regent Cruiser to present a report from the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee met today to consider 2 items. The committee approved the consent agenda for 5 all-agency projects, which include elevator modernization upgrades in 4 buildings and improvements to various fire alarm systems in 2 buildings at Milwaukee, a resident hall improvement at Platteville, replacement and upgrade of outdoor basketball and volleyball courts in the upper campus of Eau Claire, and lastly, at Whitewater, reconstruction of the 9-lane, 400-meter running track and associated track venues. We also approved 1 minor facility project at Stout to replace electrical system and repair the exterior building envelope constructed in 1981. The committee received a status report on the UW Managed Program, which is currently valued at $936,659,000. There are 52 active projects with another 26 either completed or in closeout. Lastly, the committee heard an update on the 2025-27 capital budget outcome. Wisconsin Act 15 provides $1,187,442,000 all funds, exclusive of all agency, for 45 projects. We received $947,573,000 of general fund supported borrowing, and a combination of building trust funds and university cash providing $49,801,000 for design of 15 projects. Our original request was $1,775,988,000 for 68 projects exclusive of all agency funding. Vice President Alex Rowe informed us that she anticipates receiving notification from the Department Administration on all agency allotment in early fall. Madam President, this concludes my report. I move resolutions D1 and D2.
Thank you, Regent Cruiser. Is there a second? Any discussion? See any? We ready to vote? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we'll move on. And I will now call upon Regent Adams to present a report from the Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee. Regent Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. The Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee met this morning. The committee approved the minutes of the June 5, 2025 meeting, as well as the Office of Internal Audit Fiscal Year 2025 Audit Plan Progress Report via consent agenda. Next, the committee heard from Paige Smith, Chief Compliance and Risk Officer, and Joseph Razor, Director of Risk Management, who discussed their fiscal year 2026 goals and fiscal year 2025 progress report. Chief Audit Executive Lori Stewart summarized the recently issued Youth Protection and Compliance Audit Executive Summary. The committee members had a robust discussion regarding the audit results and management's plans to address the findings and recommendations. Regent Underly noted that the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has developed procedures to perform background checks for teachers and other staff who work with youth. We may be able to leverage their work, especially for the challenges related to multiple states. The Regents also noted that the contract management issues could be managed with commercially available systems. Paige Smith presented her plan to collaborate with the university leaders to address the findings. The Regents noted that this needs to be a high priority. We asked for periodic updates on the progress and for internal audit to confirm that the corrective actions are completed as soon as possible. The Regents also suggested that moving forward for significant risk system compliance for significant risks, system compliance and risk use dashboards and continuous monitoring to enhance compliance. Regents also suggested that internal audit perform spot audits to identify significant compliance issues in a timely manner. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regent Adams. Now I'll call upon Regent Prince to present the report of the Education Committee. Regent Prince.
Thank you, Regent President Bogost. The Education Committee approved 6 degree programs, an appointment to the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health Oversight and Advisory Committee of the Wisconsin Partnership Program, the UW-Oshkosh Revised Faculty Handbook, and the corrected 2025 report on faculty promotions, tenure designations, and other changes of status. We also approved a request by UW-Madison to offer a Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science in Public Policy, the UW-Madison La Follette School of Public Affairs Certificate in Public Policy is one of the fastest growing programs at UW-Madison, with current enrollments exceeding 350 students. We also approved a request by UW-Madison to offer a Master of Science in Business, Financial Management, and Accounting. This program prepares a large and growing group of students pursuing financial analysis, advising, and management careers. It replaces the existing Master of Accountancy and will complement the MS in Business Accounting and Business Analysis. We approved a request by UW-Madison to offer a Master of Science in Quantum Computing. The program responds to significant demand for graduates in the quantum information science and technology industry and elevates the existing MS in Physics options in quantum computing to a standalone MS program. Students select from 2 pathways, a hardware or a software pathway. We also approved a request by UW River Falls to offer a Master of Science in Healthcare Analysis. The program builds upon the existing business analytics framework with a focus on healthcare systems and organizations. Graduates will develop advanced competencies in healthcare data management, predictive analytics, data privacy and security, and compliance with healthcare regulations. We approved a request by UW-Stevens Point to offer a Doctor of Education in Language and Literacy. This program will facilitate the application of research-based literacy practice. Graduates will be able to lead literacy initiatives and design research-based educational systems, feeling a very high demand for language and literacy experts across the state of Wisconsin. Sidebar, trust me, you're going to hear more and more about this. We also approved a request by UW Superior to offer a Master of Social Work, offering a one-year pathway for students who have a bachelor's degree from an accredited social work program, or a two-year pathway for students who have a bachelor's degree in a related field. Graduates from the program will be prepared to work in a variety of settings, including clinical therapy and counseling, substance use programs, community and behavioral health programs, and rural healthcare clinics. Please know that these are all tied to workforce development needs. We also approved the appointment of Kirsty Yu as one of 4 public members on the Wisconsin Partnership Program Oversight and Advisory Committee. The UW School of Medicine and Public Health is home to the Wisconsin Partnership Program, a grant-making program within SMPH, as we like to call it, committed to improving health and advancing health equity across Wisconsin through investments in community partnerships, education, and research. Kirsty Yu is a program training specialist with the Wisconsin Primary Healthcare Association, and she would serve as the community health advocate around health issues of a particular concern to a minority community. In August of 2024, the Board of Regents approved UW-Oshkosh's academic realignment into 3 new colleges. The committee approved the updated UW-Oshkosh Faculty Handbook. Interestingly, the process for updating the UW-Oshkosh Faculty Handbook was aligned with Section UWS 2.02, Wisconsin Admin Code, and the handbook itself is consistent with Regent policy documents 20-2, 20-5, 20-9, and 20-23, which are related to student evaluation of instruction, sabbatical leave program for instructional faculty, periodic post-tenure review in support of tenured faculty development and faculty tenure, respectively. And finally, we also approved the corrected 2025 report on faculty promotions, tenure designations, and other changes of status. Sidebar, it was corrected. Some names were spelled incorrectly and a couple were missing, so that does have to be correct. Madam President, this does end our report, and I respectfully request that I move for adoption, for the board resolutions C1 through C8, resolutions D and resolution E. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regent Prince. I'm glad you clarified. I didn't know what it meant by correction, so thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Moving
you.
on. Thank you, Regent Prince. Moving on, I will now call upon Regent Rye to present a report from the Business and Finance Committee. Regent Rye, you're up.
Thank you, Regent President Bogos. The Business and Finance Committee acted on its agenda as follows. The committee first reviewed, discussed, and voted to adopt the Universities of Wisconsin's proposed tuition rates and preliminary annual operating budget for the 2025-26 academic year. In her presentation to the committee, Vice President Julie Gordon outlined the key factors that were considered in developing this proposal and shared an overview of the recommendations, which were provided in advance to all regions for our review. To summarize, the proposal generally provides for a tuition increase of 5% for resident undergraduates, with some minor variances, including those that honor previously agreed upon adjustments. Non-resident undergraduate tuition will increase by either an equal dollar or equal percentage amount. With the exception of the R1 universities, similar rate increases are proposed for graduate tuition. When combined with the segregated fees approved by the board in April, the proposed average tuition and seg fee increase is 4.7%. Accounting for the room and board rates also approved in April, the total average increase in the cost of attendance for a Wisconsin resident undergraduate student at the four-year campuses would be 3.8%. The committee believes this is a reasonable proposal that takes into account several factors. First, we acknowledge and deeply appreciate the much-needed funding increase provided in the state budget bill passed last week. We're thankful for that investment, but it does not diminish our gratitude to note that there remains a gap in our ability to address the cumulative impacts of inflation. Specifically, inflation at nearly 30% since 2020 has well outpaced the increase in the undergraduate cost of attendance at 18%. Also, the compensation provisions enacted in the state budget add additional expenses to the universities. Again, while we welcome and appreciate these increases to support the faculty and staff who serve our students, our biennial budget request asks for full funding of the general wage adjustments and market and merit funds. Without that full funding, the universities are actually required to cover 30% of this added cost with their own tuition funds. After nearly a decade of reallocating resources to accommodate past compensation increases throughout the 10-year tuition freeze, UW universities are severely constrained in their ability to absorb these new costs without offsetting revenue. Lastly, the funding enables strategic investments in areas like student support services, financial aid, and cutting-edge technologies that will allow the UWs to continue to be nationally and globally recognized higher education institutions. The proposed tuition rates will ensure that UWs remain affordable compared to our neighboring peers. Our flagship has the 6th lowest resident undergraduate tuition of its 7 Midwest counterparts in 2024 and 2025. At the comprehensive universities in those states, the percentage increase in resident undergraduate tuition over the last 10 years has far exceeded their UW peers, often by 3 to 4 times the UW increases. We had all hoped for a state budget more aligned with the board's request, which would have negated the need to enact any tuition increase for Wisconsin students. But it is equally important that our universities have the resources necessary to maintain exceptional academic quality and student support so that the universities of Wisconsin can continue to deliver life-changing educational opportunities. In addition to the tuition rate adjustments, UW-Milwaukee has proposed to increase the plateau from 8 to 15 credits for their direct entry Master of Nursing program, which requires separate approval by the board under Regent Policy Document 32-2. This change does not impact current students, but assesses the same per credit rate for new incoming students while recognizing the necessary number of credits needed each semester to participate in a condensed program and graduate in only 2 years instead of 3. Moving on to the UW's 2025-26 annual operating budget, it is important to stress that this is a preliminary document. Our approval today will provide university departments with budgets to manage against for the fiscal year that began on July 1st. But because the state budget bill was enacted just last week, additional work is required to incorporate all new state revenue provided therein. A revised budget reflecting additional state investment will be brought to the board for discussion and approval at a future meeting. To summarize, the preliminary budget for fiscal year 26 projects revenues and expenses of approximately $7 billion, which are reductions of over 11%, largely attributable to workday-related transition to budgeting on an accrual basis, as well as anticipated changes in federal funding for grants and indirect cost reimbursements. These factors account for significant reductions within federal financial aid, grants and contracts, federal indirect reimbursement, and general program operations. Additional tuition and auxiliary revenues reflect rate increases, those previously approved and those recommended for approval today. Tuition revenue also reflects anticipated enrollment changes and changes in the mix of students, such as resident versus non-resident. Increased expenses within these funds largely reflect increases in salaries and fringe benefits and inflationary pressures. A total of $11.1 million in tuition balances is planned for one-time use, down from nearly $35 million a year ago. The budget document contains details on each of the universities, including the key factors that impact their revenue and expense budgets, their fundraising efforts, and the initiatives they are undertaking in support of the goals of the UW strategic plan. Notably, all 6 of the universities that projected a structural deficit within the GPR tuition fund in the 2024-25 fiscal year have eliminated their deficits, and no other universities are projecting a GPR tuition deficit for 2025-26. While this is extremely good news, it requires continuous vigilance to ensure that expenses and revenues remained aligned. We encourage and support the universities in their ongoing efforts to secure their long-term financial health. Next, the committee approved the status report on large or high-risk information technology projects. The report covers 8 major IT projects within the system, including 2 projects that were completed under budget since the last report in February. For other projects still in progress, the report offers updates on their schedule, scope, and budget. While the report was prepared prior to the July 7th go-live of the Administrative Transformation Program, Chief Information Officer Stephen Hopper shared that the transition was successful and that, I should point out, the plane landed successfully, and that a command center is prepared to monitor and address any issues, as well as to provide support to users. The board will continue to be kept apprised of any implementation issues at future meetings. I'd like to join Region President Bogost in thanking Stephen Hopper for his hard work to get us to this point, and the committee did acknowledge him with a round of applause. Lastly, the committee received the cost-benefit analysis of foundations and associated affiliated organizations report for fiscal year 2023 and 24. The report notes that 73 foundations and affiliated organizations supported the missions of the universities of Wisconsin during that period. The universities received a total of nearly $527 million from primary fundraising foundations, a 31% increase over the previous year, while providing $12.1 million in administrative support to these organizations, or a little over 2%. In conclusion, on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I now move approval of resolutions D.1, D.2, and E.
Thank you very much, Regent Rye, for your action-packed, very robust report. Is there a second? Discussion. Any regions have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's Linda Twilliger. I've
Go ahead.
received several heartbreaking letters from students who wonder at the perceived sort of like infusion of money into the budget, and then at the same time tuition hikes, which they perceive to have been sort of out of the blue and not very close to the last time, too close to the last time the tuition was raised. So as I'm new, I don't know the answer to either of those questions. I'm wondering if someone could give me like a one sentence summary of what to say to people who are asking that question.
I can try, Regent, to offer some words, and then I'll see if President Rothman would like to add to that as well. I think it's important, number one, that the committee and all of us as Regents take the tuition increase very seriously and understand the impact on students and families in Wisconsin. Part of the salary adjustments that are in the legislation that was signed by the governor was a portion that we have to match 30%, and they contribute 70%. So over 60% of the tuition increase that has been proposed is something that we have to do based on the legislation that was passed, the budget bill. If we were to take into account just inflation on purchase products, supplies and expenses, not looking at inflation of other areas or salaries, and added an inflationary cost of say 2.5% to that number, that's another $11 million. So the tuition increase is necessary, one, based on the bill that was passed, and two, to account for the inflation, three, also to partially account for some of the things that we will now have to make up for that the federal government will be taking away from our individual campuses that support our students directly.
Yes.
So although a very difficult conversation, a very difficult decision, it is one that needed to be made based on the budget that was passed. We did ask that 100% of the salary increases would be covered in the budget bill. That was not done. 30% is our responsibility as the universities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Roth.
And Regent Terwilliger, if I may, Regent President Bogos, just add one other point. I think Regent Rye summarized it very accurately. The other point I would make, and I know this is not of great solace to students as they have to navigate tuition increases, we still remain the most affordable public university system in the Midwest, and I think well beyond that. And I think we have to make sure that we continue to emphasize that as best we can. We are an incredible value. And there are also institutional and other student financial aid that is available. We want our students to be successful. And this was a difficult recommendation for me to make as well, because we're trying to balance understanding that the state supports 1/5 of our budget, about 20%. There was a time that it supported close to 44% of our budget. And as that funding has gone down for reasons that, notwithstanding the increase that we got this time, that's simply the fact. And tuition has become a bigger portion of our revenue. And we tried hard to find the right balance in the recommendation that we made to the Business and Finance Committee. I hope we got there, but I also understand the concern of students and their parents. And we did not take that lightly by any means.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Nixon, we have a few hands up, then Regent Salzwedel, and then Regent Goydam. Go ahead, Regent Nixon.
Thank you. I was on the committee this morning, and Regent Rye was a very great presentation, but it was a little too antiseptic for me. And I think I explained this morning, and this is President Rothman. I was one of those kids that got a Pell Grant. My dad died when I was 10 years old, and it was just my mother and I got a Pell Grant. And I get how every dollar is valuable. I will point out that I have 4 children and not one of them received grants or aids. Okay, so whatever that investment was that the government did in me in Pell Grants 50 years ago seems to have paid off. But the other thing I want to point out, and I said this morning, my mother told me to never use the word only and an amount of money in the same sentence. So while we are talking an amount of, less than $500 or $500, when you don't have $500, it is a big deal. And I think I recounted this morning that I didn't drive my car when I was in college for like 4 weeks because I didn't have gas for it. Okay, so we understood. If you want to, I don't want anybody to think that the 15-minute presentation you just had was the discussion on this. We had 2 hours this morning talking about this, and anybody wants to know the real details, they should listen to the Business and Finance Committee because we really, really drilled down on this. I think the biggest point is that a lot of the money we got that, you got 250 million, why do you need to raise? Well, a lot of that money is restricted and accounted for, and we have to get it and we have to do things. But I think Regent Rye touched on this point. The total tuition increase will be 48 million. Of that, $30 million is baked in already by virtue of the way the state gives us money to pay our employees. Historically speaking, they give 70% and we have to pay 30, and it's been coming from tuition. And the bad answer is because we've always done it that way. All right. But the point is, we still needed to come up with $30 million, even though, as Regent Rice said, we asked the state to fund all of that, and they opted not to, and that's certainly their choice. And I'm not criticizing them for it. I'm just saying that that requires us to come up with $30 million. That percentage, and that's just on the match part of it. That doesn't include paying stars or keeping people or doing anything else. So of the 48 million, 30 million was baked into the budget already. Okay. And the rest of it, Regent Rye talked about. I just don't want anybody listening to think we didn't take that seriously. And I personally take it very seriously, as I've already explained my own personal history. So when somebody says another $500 or another $300, I get it. I was that kid. My kids were not that kid, but I was that kid. I was the kid when that couple $100 meant a lot. And again, pointing out, supporting Regent Rothman, I think the government investing in a Pell Grant in me probably turned out okay for the state and the federal governments in the long run. That's just my own thought. I'm not sure about that. But nobody should think that this was lightly taken, that we didn't listen to that, and that it isn't of great concern to all of us. And I know even a couple $100, at least for me, that was a fortune. All right, I'll do what I don't do well now. I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Nixon, Regent Zolsweedel, and then Regent Goydam.
Just a quick question. I know there's been a lot of talk about the money side of this and less discussion about the limitation on the number of positions that was included in the biennial budget, and also the workload, 24 credit hours, and then 12 at RR1s. Jay, I was wondering if you could comment on that, and perhaps might be good for us to get the perspective from some chancellors in terms of how we plan to deal with that portion of it as well.
If I start with the position cap, I think in the current structure that is manageable, given the exceptions that are there. We'll have to, and we have been monitoring it because we were required to do so, and we have lived up to the terms of the agreement from December 2023. So I think that is manageable. We have some lifting to do on the faculty credit hour piece, the workload piece. That impacts each of our universities differently. And it probably has the most significant impact on our flagship university in terms of, starting out at a 2-2 load. There are market conditions in which faculty members are hired that are going to require something other than that if we are going to get top flight faculty and keep top flight faculty. There are a number of, I think, exceptions we will need to work through with the legislature. So I don't want to minimize the challenge that we are going to have to get that done. We are committed to get it done and working with the legislature and the governor's office to get it done and get it done in a way that fulfills, I think, what the legislature was trying to seek, but at the same time ensuring that all of our universities have a glide path on which they can operate and be able to attract and retain highly qualified faculty, because I think that's the biggest piece. The same, I think, is true for the credit transfer, and it's really looking at general education credits, those base credits that we get, and the direction to us is to come up with a policy regarding the transferability, and then importantly, the applicability of those credits, so that if you start out at Eau Claire and you transfer to Milwaukee, that if you have fulfilled your core general education credits at Eau Claire, that when you transfer to Milwaukee, you're not being asked to come up with additional credits because Milwaukee's structure is differently. We have work groups that are going to work through these issues. We are going to obviously consult closely with chancellors. We are going to consult closely with provosts at each of our universities and certainly work with shared governance. Our time frame is tight and we're going to have to work quickly and efficiently, but we also have to work smartly so that we comply with the legislative requirements, but at the same time make something and have policies to present to this board that are functional, that are efficient, and achieve our missions of delivering the highest possible education we possibly can deliver.
Before we move on, did you ask if any chancellors want to, I think Regent Salzwedel, if any chancellors wanted to comment, but
Yeah, I think that that might be good for the regents to hear.
I can't see people's hands if anybody. Okay, Chancellor Manukin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't seem to be able to turn on my video, so apologies for, oh, there, it worked. I would agree with everything that President Rothman just said. I would say that at Madison, we operate in a market for talent. We're really proud of our research activities. It's a core part of what we are and who we do, what we do and who we are. As you know, in this most recent year, our level of research activity was 6th in the country. This means that we are regularly both facing risks that our strongest faculty get attention from elsewhere. And when we're looking to hire, we are playing in a national market, bringing the strongest possible scholars, researchers, teachers, and those participating in service to the state. And they're doing incredible research and supporting the creation of startups and cures and all kinds of amazing activities. And in its current form, this legislation poses quite significant challenge for us. And I think it's important that you all recognize and understand that. I appreciate very much that the legislative language realizes that this is not adequate in its current form and that there need to be thoughtfully developed frameworks and exceptions that will let us promote and produce our excellence. But those will be absolutely critical to the successful functioning and ongoing building and excellence of my institution. If those are not produced, we would have enormous challenge and we would become a potential poaching ground quickly, and we would be unable to recruit in some of the very high needs areas that we all view as a priority. So I look forward to working closely with the regents to develop appropriate policies. There's a lot of guidance about how other states have gone about this, and the recognition that it's also critical to the functioning of high functioning universities for there to be a good amount of on the ground level delegation. You can see that in policies in states ranging from Ohio to North Carolina to many others. And it's going to be very, very important that we recognize the appropriate need for accountability and transparency, but that we also help our superb departments and our excellent faculty be able to do their jobs, which in the case of my university is certainly teaching, but it's also world-class research as well as outreach.
Thank you, Chancellor Manukin. Any other chancellors wanted to share anything before we move on? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Regent Goydam?
Yeah, thanks, Regent President Bogus. This was really just in response to Linda's question with respect to the tuition increase. I do think it's something that we should probably help students and others in the community better understand, because there is some dissonance with a headline that we've gotten significant funding, but then a separate headline that we have a tuition increase. And I think, putting together the facts, which are a 10% tuition freeze, being 44th in funding, seeking out more funds and not being able to receive all that we needed. I think that's all part of it, coupled with the fact that we continue to be one of the best values and have not increased tuition at the clip of many of our peers. I think those pieces really are important to make sure everyone's got those details and those statistics top of mind. So maybe potentially providing something like that would be helpful. So folks who weren't reading every page of the fabulous materials that Julie Gordon put together can really understand, because I think there's a really important narrative there, that these universities have done a tremendous job with the resources they have, and the faculty and staff need to be provided with the wages that are appropriate and commensurate to their work. And this is unfortunately the way to do it under the circumstances. So it's just important that everyone understands that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other questions or discussion before we go ahead and vote? See any? Okay. All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. So that concludes our open session agenda. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Weatherly. Will you read the very long motion to move us into closed session?
Yeah.
Here we go.
If anyone
Take it
wants to
away.
take a break, if everyone wants to take a break, now's going to be your opportunity. I move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to A, consider personal histories related to UW Madison honorary degree nominations as permitted by state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent F. B, consider a student request for review of a UW Milwaukee decision as permitted by state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent A, parent F, parent G. Confer with legal counsel regarding potential or pending litigation, including New York v. Trump, District of Rhode Island case, Massachusetts versus NIH, District of Massachusetts, AAU versus NIH, District of Massachusetts, California versus Department of Education, District of Massachusetts, New York versus McMahon, District of Massachusetts, Colorado versus HHS, District of Rhode Island versus Trump, District of Rhode Island, Massachusetts versus HHS, District of Massachusetts, AAU versus Department of Energy, District of Massachusetts, Maryland versus Corporation for National and Community Service, operating as AmeriCorps, District of Maryland. ACLS, I hope that is correct as it's typed for me. Et al. Versus McMahon et al. Or McDonald et al. Southern District of New York. New York versus Kennedy, District of Rhode Island. AAU versus National Science Foundation, District of Massachusetts. New York versus National Science Foundation, Southern District of New York. AAU et al. Versus Department of Defense, District of Massachusetts. New Jersey versus OMB, District of Massachusetts. And Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System, et al. Versus University of Miami, Dane County Circuit Court, as permitted by state statute 19.81, parent 1, parent G. And finally, D, consider strategies for crime detection and prevention as permitted by state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent D.
Wow, that was amazing. Excellent job. I think law school's in your future. You did that so well. Regents, is there a second?
Second.
Megan, please call the roll.
Regent Adams,
Yes.
Regent Adanga,
Yes.
Regent Bogus,
Yes.
Regent Fritz, Regent Goydam,
Yes.
Regent Cruiser,
Yes.
Regent Menny-Deeds,
Yes.
Regent Nixon,
Yes.
Regent Palzowitz,
Yes.
Regent Prince,
Yes.
Regent Rye,
Yes.
Regent Rogers,
Yes.
Regent Salzwedel,
Yes.
Regent Terwilliger,
Yes.
Regent Trainer, Regent Underly,
Yes.
Regent Walsh,
Yes.
and Regent Weatherly.
Yes.
Thank you, Megan. We'll now pause, clear the line for our closed session, and we're going to take like a less than 5-minute break.